our Quarter Fest kind of kept
Oh,
me busy.
Sergeant Pepper.
That guy goes down there.
They're going to bring some. Oh, just so I can get my
This is not good in Thailand because your foot is higher than their foot. Little things like that.
All right, good afternoon. Get everybody's attention. We're honored to have our county commissioners here with us this afternoon, our county judge, county commissioners. Scheduled in the city of Edinburg to have a joint session with the county commission. I'm going to call our meeting to order. I see that we have a quorum with all members except the JIS court present. Was the meeting posted as the law requires, Ms. Garza?
Yes, Mayor, it was posted on the these are on the record at
All right, that being the case, then I'm going to, the meeting is called to order, and I'll turn it over to our county judge.
Well, as county judge, at this time, I'm also going to be calling our meeting to order that has been properly posted. And I want to announce as part of the roll call that we have present here today Commissioner Cuellar from County Commissioner Precinct 1, Commissioner Palacios, County Commissioner Precinct 4, and myself. We have a quorum. Go ahead, Mayor.
All right, I guess the first item that we need to tend to on the city side is consent agenda, which is going to be scheduling the Tuesday, February 16th meeting to Monday, February the 15th of 2016. Do I hear a motion in connection with that? We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And next, we have the matter for discussion in connection with an MOU between the county and the city regarding the courthouse project. And this is what we're here to discuss together and take action on. I don't know, I guess we're going to have a presentation by
Yes, we are. Under our agenda, we have item number 2A1, discussion regarding the County of Hidalgo's new courthouse project. And I guess very briefly, we ought to mention that this is a historic moment in our county's history. Hidalgo County was incorporated by the legislature back in 1852. Since then, it took them a while for the County Commissioners Court to construct their first courthouse. But in the meantime, they were meeting at the general store in the city of Hidalgo. They constructed a courthouse in the 1860s. And they were there up until the early 20th century. I believe it was 1906 or 1908. At that point in time, they constructed a new courthouse at that time that was outdated, and a newer, the last one, the present one, was built in 1954. And we're here today to discuss the possibility of entering into an agreement with the City of Edinburg to properly fund an adequate courthouse to provide safety and security for our constituents, our residents of Hidalgo County. To that end, at this time, under item 2A2, we have a presentation that to be made by ERO Architects regarding the new County of Hidalgo courthouse.
I'm here, sir. Judge, Commissioners, Mayor Garcia, and council members, thank you all very much for giving us an opportunity. For the record, my name is Eli Ochoa. I'm an architect and partner with ERO Architects. With me is our judicial consultant, Halden Talley with HDR out of Dallas. HDR is pretty much a U.S.-wide and multinational firm that does a lot of judicial courts, and they are our court consultant, judicial consultant. So that being said, thank you all very much for giving us an opportunity to be here. I'm just going to go very quickly over where we're at today. Going kind of backtracking, if y'all can remember, the last directive that we'd been given was to go from 4 courtrooms to 6 courtrooms per floor. And so the new design contemplates that. This is a ground floor. We can get into it, Judge, if you'd like, but basically I think we've already done the floor plate presentations to y'all. But the ground floor, for the most part, it has the sally port, which is down here on the south side. It also has the main entrance, which is over on the north, and it's all the secured entry. There's one way in, one way out. We have all of the county clerk's office, which takes up the bulk of everything on the northeast side of the floor plan. We have the large jury selection assembly hall that also functions as a high visibility courtroom in the event that you have a a jury trial that is going to have an inordinate amount of people in the assembly. And then we also have in the back right here is the DA's office, and then all this is the defendants in custody. It's all designed to judicial and jail standards, and so this little area back here is very, very critical from a security standpoint as to how we house those defendants in custody. It's basically all designed to jail standards, but it's not intended to hold anyone for more than 24 hours. So it's not a place where we're going to have anybody stay there. They have to come in and go out. On the second floor, we have the district clerk's office is up on the second floor. We also have the appellate court, and then we have the bar association and the law library. So all that's occurring on the second floor. On the third floor, you start seeing the courts. There's actually 6 courts on each floor. They're right along here. And then we have, here on the third floor, we have the Indigent Defense and Public Defender Office on the north. And then each of the floors thereafter are pretty much the same thing. It's 6 courts per floor. They each have their individual circulation, so that you never cross paths between a defendant in custody, the public, and the judicial staff. So they're each in their own separate little areas that are safe and secure from each other, and they don't really see anyone until you actually go into the courtroom. And that's where everybody would then come together. That's the public, the judicial staff, and those defendants in custody. Go on to the next one. Now we're going to get into a little bit of the design. If y'all can remember, the original design was a little austere. It was somewhat cold. It followed a little bit of the international style of what the existing courthouse was. There was a request to see if we could alter that and kind of warm it up. And so today's presentation is really the result or the culmination of that exercise. What we did is we really wanted to develop a plan that was really indigenous to the valley. We really wanted to emphasize the culture, and we wanted to do that by respecting the land, the people, and the history of the valley, which is what forms the culture. And we designed it around 12 design metaphors, and I'm going to go through each of those 12 design metaphors with you all here real quickly, just so you can see how it's all incorporated into the design of the plan. The first one is the orange grove. Now, we're not proposing to have orange groves with orange trees, but again, it's a metaphor. All the trees, all the planting, everything is designed around the desires of the downtown master plan for the city of Edinburg. So all the trees, plantings, everything comes off of their palette of materials. But the idea is, and you'll see it right here, this is what we're calling the orchard. There's a small parking lot here. It's for handicap and some of the main staff that's going to be present here at the courthouse. The parking for the public will be off-site. It'll be either surface parking up onto the old Robert Chevrolet and that property that the county owns, or it'll be through a combination of some kind of parking that the city of Edinburg is desiring to put in place, and the city of Edinburg, I'm sure, will describe what they're looking for there. But the idea is to try to develop a real vibrant downtown where you don't just park on the site, go into the courthouse, and leave. The idea is to have people walk through downtown to be able to get to the courthouse, thereby creating more of a vibrancy of the downtown development for retail, commercial, and just really help the entire downtown area of the city of Edinburg just really develop some vibrancy to it. So the parking lot, as I said, the handicap, you walk across the orchard. The main entrance is right here at this point. The second metaphor is the river, and you'll see that depicted here in some of the renderings here in just a second. But along this, it's the extension of the promenade from City of Edinburg, and then it's also the parking lots up to the north. They end up walking across here. We call it an avenida, more so than a promenade. Same thing. but we'll show you how we ended up developing that and developing that metaphor. We also wanted to tie in University of Texas Rio Grande Valley. And so we've taken some of the finishes that are present on the campus and we've tried to incorporate them into the design. So from an urban context, they all kind of start tying in together, and they actually tie into the design of the City Hall also. Again, trying to create one large urban area that has some contextual relationship to each other. The other one is the City of Edinburg's City Hall, the building that we're currently in, and you'll see some of those aspects in the design here in just a second, but it's primarily the masonry and the glazing that we've tried to incorporate, and then also some of the metal panels. Another facility that was really important to us, because it's right across the street, is the museum. And so you'll see that some of the colors that we picked for the front of the building actually is a reflection of what's happening across the street at the museum. Primarily the white that we really wanted to try to borrow from. And then the more earth tones, reds, that we also wanted to incorporate into the design. The other one is, we have a lot of recharge zones here for the Rio Grande, and they typically manifest themselves in what we call an ojo de agua, which is where the recharge zone manifests itself and then continues to feed the Rio Grande. And so we've kind of designed that as a design metaphor into the site work of the design of the courthouse. Another issue or another aspect that's really integral from an architectural point of view is the Talavera tile. And so we're trying to incorporate this not only in the interior, but also in how we're going to be able to let that manifest itself on the exterior of the building. And we'll show you some of those here in just a second. The mesquite wood, this is probably one of the largest areas where mesquite becomes just a real integral part of our culture. And we've tried to incorporate some of the mesquite wood finishes into the building. Along with the jacalito, and you'll see that here in a little bit, it's kind of back in here, and we've designed the sally port to take on that characteristic. It all kind of really melds together here in just a second, and you'll see it. The avenida that we had talked about, it's really the extension of the McIntyre Promenade, and then it's the walkway straight into the courthouse. Again, we've taken the downtown master plan designed for some of the planners, and we're really incorporating it into how we end up designing this walkway or this avenida to the courthouse. The porch, which is very prevalent to our homes here in the valley, it's where we kind of get away from the sun, and you'll see how the porch is going to be depicted here on the elevations and the perspectives of the building. We've designed the front porch to actually have about a 25-foot cantilever out towards the front of the building, so that in the summertime, for the most part, that whole waiting area on the north side of the courthouse is going to be under shade. And we've done that to kind of make sure that people are having to stand out with the sun beating down on their faces and having to deal with that heat. And then the last one, the Rio Grande Valley is a jewel of the river, and so we really wanted to design and show the jewel that the valley is and how important the river is to our culture. And so I'll show that to you all here in just a second. This is the existing site. You'll see that we have McIntyre here on the north. The main drive, it'll be one way all the way around the courthouse going counterclockwise. The entrance into the courthouse would be through the main drive. This all becomes drop-off area all along in here. And then the main entry to the courthouse is right up underneath where the little hand is showing on your screen right now. The parking lot that the county has currently right now to the north up towards the Robert Chevrolet area, it comes in up here from the north, you walk down, and then you come down the avenida, and then you'll notice a portion of the building. This isn't a perspective, so you see some of the perspective in the plan. I hope that doesn't kind of tilt your perspective of what's happening, but we're actually as if we were in a balloon up high looking down, so it does have some perspective. But we have canted this main public area on the angle of the perpendicular to the avenida, so as you're approaching it, you actually have a front, and you're not approaching it from the side. That's real important and critical in monumental-type buildings, which this is certainly is. Here's our orchard. Here's the parking. We have the service entrance in the back. This right here is the sally port. Judges have their own secured parking. They come in, they go up the ramp, and they park on the second floor of the sally port. So they're actually parked up on the roof of the sally port. Not on the roof, it's actually a second floor. The parking garage actually has a roof on it, so it's a two-story volume. The defendants in custody have their own separate entrance into the sally port on the ground floor, and it's right here, right off of 12th Street. And you come on in, and then when they exit out, they exit back out through the service court and then come back out. This right in here is the tower building. The north 1/3 of the building is all the public access area. The center third, or the center core, is actually where all the courtrooms exist. And then the back third is where all the judicial corridor is and all the judicial suites that support the courtrooms. This is a look up the avenida, and you start seeing in here, obviously, you'll see some of the bubblers here, which represent the Rio Grande, also the Ojo de Agua. You'll see some of the UT RGV being depicted here. This is the main porch also. And then you'll notice that the colors are taking on a very warm context, so that it's not so cold, it's not so medicinal, hospital-like. We really wanted to try to be able to give it some human scale and have it be something that, as a human, you have this visceral feeling that it's a facility that you want to go and visit, not back away from. Here's the main entrance, and you'll see it's right on the Avenida axis. And then you'll start seeing some images here. This is our jewel, which is our icon right down in here, and it also is done in a Talavera tile. It's a punched, anodized copper or aluminum material that we're going to be using. So what you see here is all as maintenance-free a material as we can have, so that we're not having to have the county have to spend a lot of money from a maintenance point of view. Anything you want to add? No? Okay. This is kind of we're looking here over what we call the orchard, and this now you'll start seeing how the different massing comes together on the building. This back on the back side here is the judicial volume. This is the courthouse volume, and then all this up in here in the front is the public volume. And here's our main entrance right here. And then what you'll see here in 3 floors is the indigent defense and public defender on the 3rd, the district clerk on the 2nd, and then the county clerk on the 1st. Now, we really wanted to orient this to the north because we wanted to be able to have the opportunity to have a lot of daylight harvesting. If you just look at the space that we're in right now, we have a lot of windows to the north. They let in a lot of really nice full spectrum lighting, and we don't have to worry about providing shading or anything to that effect because we don't have that much heat gain. And so by being able to harvest that light, we end up using actually less light to have to light the facility up. And so again, this is one of the features that we're incorporating so that we can try to minimize the amount of electricity that we're using on the facility. This is the back side. This is all the judicial area. And then you'll see right down in here, this is what we call the jacalito. When you look in there, you'll see it's made up of, again, this is aluminum material. It's all anodized aluminum, so we don't have to worry about oxidation caused by the UV infiltration on the color. And then it also takes on a very soft wood, warm feeling that we have on the building. But right behind this wall here is where all the service court is. Now remember, this is the area that's highly secured. So behind this wall is a very secured area that is going to be housing not just the judges, but all the defendants in custody will be back here also. This is along Cano. One of the things that we incorporated as you walk across the orchard is the memorial that we have. We've relocated it and given it a place of prominence on the site. You'll notice also that it's up on a plinth. The entire building is on a plinth. And what I mean by a plinth is the finished floor, the ground floor, is actually raised up almost 4 feet. We do that for several reasons. Number one, it's important in monumental facilities that we kind of raise it up and give it the prominence that it deserves. But we also have some issues as it relates to safety and the idea or the notion of somebody trying to drive a car or some kind of vehicle into the space. So it provides a buffer so that that can't be done. Then the other things that we have to incorporate and that we have to account for is what we call blast protection. In the event that that vehicle is carrying some kind of explosive, this is all code requirements. So the entire facility is going to be designed to be able to meet those requirements also. And then here's the main entrance, and you'll see that the Talavera tile is depicted in this punched screen that is in front of the windows. We took 3 different samples of Talavera tile, created a pattern, and then put the pattern on this punched screen that we have over the glass. This becomes our jewel box, and then you'll see the large canopy, which comes in off of UTRGV. The colors come from UTRGV. The color of the window mullions and everything is the light bronze or medium bronze. The white here comes off of the museum across the street, and you'll see some of the wood depicted here. You'll see this long cantilever right here. That long cantilever is what's going to be providing all the shading for the front of the building. So as people are out maneuvering down along the front of the building, they'll actually be in shade. The sun will be behind them, and that cantilever is going to provide the shade for them to be out in front of the building and not be in the sun. This is a picture of the Avenida. You'll see the bubblers here. One thing I want to make clear is these bubblers are actually little holes that are in the paving, and the water squirts up through the hole about yay high, and then it falls back down on the paving, and we have a drainage. There's some drainage system that we use. The water goes down through the pavers, goes back down into the basin, and then gets recirculated. We did this so that we wouldn't have to worry about leaves coming in off of trees and getting into the ponds and just creating a real issue for us from a maintenance point of view. And then constantly having to have building and grounds out, cleaning out all the leaves. So we did it in a way that we could have, and these are the ojo de agua, but we did it in a way so that we can have some cooling effect out on the walkway. We also did it so that you can hear the sound of the water running, and you're not hearing the cars drive by and the honking and the motors and everything, kind of getting you ready as you walk into the courthouse. And then one of the things that we wanted to do is we wanted to show the city the extension of the McIntyre Promenade onto the site. And so what we did is these trees, this plant growth is the exact same materials that the city has in their downtown master plan. And so we wanted to see and we wanted to show how the extension, this is a corner of McIntyre and 10th Street. And as you're coming off of City Hall, just right up here, and then looking back into your perspective of the City Hall, of the courthouse, and this would be your view towards that. It's designed around, and you'll see it, let me go back because I think that was, you'll see that the idea was, it was a courthouse on the green. It's a courthouse on the square, obviously, because we're on the square. But we also wanted it on the green so that in the future, we're not tying up the design with a lot of features, and this gives the city, the county, an opportunity to go out, maybe see if they can get any kinds of grants, and see how they may want to end up developing those green spaces in the future. We didn't want to tie them up with a lot of money that we would have to spend from a landscaping point of view. So I think it works out really well from what they're looking for. Judge, that concludes the presentation as far as the architecture is concerned, unless y'all have any questions.
Am I correct that the floor plan, as you described it, is the same floor plan that we've been discussing at least for the last 2 prior meetings?
Yes, sir, it is.
Now,
The floor plan has not changed.
we had one area of discussion earlier this last week, and that is that is it on the 2nd or 3rd floor that we have the indigent defense and the public defender located?
It's on the 3rd floor, Judge, and if you look at this image, it's this whole area. Can y'all see that, the little hand? It's this whole 3rd floor right here. Half of that space is indigent defense, the other half of it is the public defender.
And taking into consideration the need for future space in later years, future years, I believe you stated that we could, if we wanted to. Right now, we have 1 extra courtroom for future expansion.
That's correct.
But that if we were to move in the future or now, the indigent defense office and the public defender office to another location besides the courthouse, that we would be able to construct 3 more, which would make it a total of 4 courthouses for future expansion and growth.
That's correct.
And if we wanted to add an additional floor, you've described a floor plan that lays out 6 floors. If we wanted to add an additional floor, that would generate another 4 courtrooms, which will allow us a total of 8 courtrooms.
Actually, Judge, if we added the 7th floor, we could add an additional 6 courtrooms
An additional 6?
to the 4. Yes, so that'd be a total of 10 courts that you could add to the facility.
And I believe at that meeting, you indicated that we were looking at an additional $5 million for that 7th floor.
That's correct. We've done some estimating. We're working with a construction manager out of Austin, and we asked them to price out a shell floor. That shell floor could accommodate 6 new courts. Those 6 courts could function as both civil and criminal, because they would all 6 courts would have access to the defendant in custody elevators and that whole core for defendants in custody. So that would be adding 1 floor to the top of this building.
So that would then,
Yeah, and that's a shell only, Judge.
It's not finished
that would
out.
bring the price up to $155 million.
Well, right now,
Not
what we
to
have,
exceed.
what we have right now, Judge, is we have what we call a CCL, a construction cost limitation of $113 million. That would add about $5 million to that. So our construction cost limitation would go up to about 118. The difference to get you to the 150 is all the soft costs that are associated with developing the project.
All right. But if we were to add those soft costs and the CPL, then we'd be looking no longer at a max of 150, but a max of 155.
That's correct, sir.
So the first issue that needs to be considered is, do we go up to this, do we construct 7 floors or 6 floors?
Eli, if I may ask a question. From what I saw in the original floor plan, you had the district attorney's office in this new courthouse, is that correct?
Not the entire district attorney's office. It's a small, what we call it, a little jump operations center.
Okay.
For those that are going to be working out of the courthouse that day, they'll have a place to go, touch down, get their work done, and not have to be going back and forth across. It's a small area.
Let me ask you another question. How about the Court of Appeals? Are they being?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
The Court of Appeals?
The Court of Appeals is on the 2nd floor, and it houses the entire Court of Appeal program.
Yeah, the only reason I'm asking these questions is the mere fact that we'll be vacating a proportion of the building that they're currently in there, and we'll be relocating them, what I'm assuming, to the new courthouse now, which is going to open up some space in that building. I'm just for the sake of clarity here, we're not going to have a shortage of space with these departments being moved over there and courts.
Right,
Okay.
yes.
You want to add one thing? Yeah.
Just to add one thing, Judge, on the, as far as the soft cost, the soft cost, in addition to all the fees, permits, and things like that, we also did have a little over $3 million in there for the demolition cost for existing facilities on the site, and over $5 million in contingencies for the county. So
That's all part of the 150.
That's correct.
that is correct. So there are some discretionary, funds that are estimated in there as far as the overall budget.
I have a question.
Yes, Commissioner.
If we were to move the public defender's office in the future, those courts, would that be a fully functional courtroom, or would it be civil?
Well, fully functional, I guess, could take on different aspects. It would be a fully functioning civil court. Right. The reason it would be civil court is because we don't have a way to get the defendants in custody into those courtrooms without crossing either the judicial staff or the public. And so, one of the aspects of what a lot of counties are doing is they're going to civil courts and criminal courts. That's not the case with us, although these three courts would have to be civil.
Any future courts, we could designate them, we could request that our legislators in creating them designate them to be civil courts, strictly civil. And, then that's the way that would have to be.
Right. That's correct.
Commissioners, are there any questions on whether or not we should do 6 or 7 floors?
Judge, it's going to depend on cost at the end of the day. I know our financial officer is here. I don't know if he's going to do a presentation regarding the finances and what the county can afford. At the end of the day, I think that's our threshold there. I mean, the most important thing is what can we afford to do. We want to ensure that we build what we need, not so much what we want. I know there's ideas of a 7th floor and all, but again, at the end of the day, it's going to depend on what we can afford today. If there's no immediate need for that space, should we? We got a forecast. I think we had a meeting on Friday. We forecasted 20, 30 years for the extra shelf space to be used. I don't know if it's a good idea, but of course, I'd like to hear from our financial advisor if that would be possible.
He's coming up. He's going to be telling us, I guess, telling both sides how they can afford it. What about before we get to the financial officer, is there any other questions on? I think the big concern is if they have to add another floor in 20 or 30 years, what that future cost is going to be compared to what it is now or what it could be now.
Really disruptive.
And again, I agree with Commissioner Palacios that it all depends on what we can afford. But if there's no questions, then I'll ask that Noe come and discuss the issue of financing with us here at the county commissioners part of this meeting, and then possibly with the city if requested by the mayor.
Are we dismissed, Judge? We're not leaving. I didn't know if I needed to leave the podium.
No, I don't have any other questions, other than, do you want to discuss timeline, generally discuss it?
We can discuss timeline.
Couple of comments, not really questions. It's, we're not questioning. We trust the county's design for their needs, and I think certainly in courtrooms availability is that's a lot of room for growth in the future. You made some comments about those 3 courtrooms could only be civil courtrooms. Again, I'm not getting into your design, but I am an attorney and I serve courthouse a long time. And county courts at law and district courts are going to be in this building. County courts at law deal with misdemeanors, DWI cases, that sort of thing. So conceivably, you could use those courtrooms for a double function if they were county courts of law. You don't really have the risk situation and not having the access to the back elevators because you're not going to have, people high crimes, felons, that sort of thing. So just an observation.
You're correct, Mayor. That is true. The takeaway I wanted to say is they will not have access to the defendant in custody area.
And the other thing, I think from the city side, and I don't mean to speak for the council, but I think our concern was aesthetics, which you covered, location of the courthouse and approach and layout and footprint, that sort of thing. That's been all addressed, and I think, again, I don't mean to speak for everyone can speak for themselves, but I think we're probably very happy and very satisfied with that. As far as the cost, and before our advisor comes up here, I think the agreement was that the City of Edinburg would contribute a total of $30 million over a period of time, and that is the base amount. We understand that by the time you're through paying, you've got interest and that sort of thing. But, what the rest of the decisions on an additional floor or additional costs of $5 million or whatever it is, doesn't really affect the city. That's what I want to hear from, because we're going to be limited to $30 million contribution. And that's what I'd like to hear about also.
Do you mind? I know maybe we're assuming too much and assuming that the commissioners are satisfied with the facade, but
I would love to hear from all of them.
Commissioners,
Judge, that was my next question. As long as we're all in agreement as to what Mr. Ochoa has presented, that was big the last time we did it. Of course, we're on timeline, so I'm hearing that it's good.
Yeah.
I don't know about the gentleman.
I think where I was at, Judge, was I think you had to discuss the longer we delay this, the more costly it gets. So I think we need to move fast. But getting back to that, my concerns are, we're capped at 30 million. So I guess we're here to support you guys and what you guys are looking at. It is going to be your facility, not the city. It's not a city building. It's still your building. But whatever you guys, if you want the extras or you want to go and build an orchard and all these things, I'm just hoping that, like the mayor said, from our understanding is that we're at 30 million, and that's where we started at, I guess, when I first got elected almost 3 years ago, and that's where we're at today. So just so that becomes something, like he said, I can't speak for everybody, but I think we're capped at that. And then we have a lot of other projects going on right now with an arena, and we also have a soccer facility that we're working on. So we got some major projects, this being another one, and we're glad to have it here in the city.
well, I know on behalf of the county, we welcome your involvement and your assistance in trying to get this facility constructed that will benefit, very directly the residents in the city of Edinburg, but at the same time, all of the residents and citizens of Hidalgo County. It's a win-win for the city and for the county, the way we're looking at it. And I'm not sure, Commissioner Hassel, what your thoughts are. I know you had some concerns.
Judge, actually, from the time that we began this, I'm really happy with the outcome, with what we've come to today. I think Eli has addressed a lot of our concerns from the beginning, from the building, the facade of the building, the landscaping, and what have you. So I'm extremely happy with what we have now, and Judge, I'm really looking forward to moving forward.
And I guess to encapsulate, that means we're ready to sign an MOU at the amounts we talked about, and the rest of it is in your lap as far as the other floor or 5 million or whatever it is. We won't interfere or comment or get involved with that. We trust in the road you'll take, so.
Thank you, Mayor. I know that on that issue, I'd like to wait until we have a full court as to whether or not, it's not going to impact the city of Edinburg,
Yes.
so we could do it at another meeting when we have a full court and they decide whether to spend the additional $5 million.
Judge, if I may comment, I want to thank the City of Edinburg. It's been a good marriage. I think at the onset, where we're at right now, there's a great return on investment on where we're at, on the design of it. I think ERO has done an impeccable job. I know the work has just begun, though. I mean, we are barely going to enter into the design development phase of the project. So the real, right now we're in theory now, but we'll figure out what we end up getting. Well, we appreciate the contribution, the help, the partnership. I look forward to, I hope we can advance this project. I look forward to realizing it. But just the one question for Eli, talk to just a little bit for the sake of the general public, the design development phase, and what some of your recommendations are or may be as we go through the process of value engineering a lot of the initial concepts, so that the general public can understand that the work's just begun.
Right.
This number that we have in the air, it's still in theory. It won't be realized until we go through the process.
Thank you, Commissioner. One of the things I'd like, and what I have on the screen, and I apologize, it's really difficult to read from there. It's actually difficult to read on here, is that we incorporate what we call a construction manager at risk. And that really goes to alleviating a lot of the concerns that the Commissioner has just addressed. The idea of what we have here, let me just go through the schedule and then I'll show you how a CM kind of has input into this process. But this schedule just contemplates a March 1st start date for the design development. And it actually takes us through 6 months. And then we start construction documents. And then we have a plan here where we actually start construction on the project before the end of this year. And that's assuming that these milestones are hit in terms of selection of architect in March, and then a selection of what we call a construction manager about a month to 6 weeks thereafter. And then we have a 20 to 22 month construction period, which would move us into the new completed project about October of 2018. Now, I say that it's all predicated on a lot of what the weather does, because the weather can wreak havoc on construction. Just to give you an idea, we have a project that we have that's under construction right now. It has 121 rain days on it. And so the weather can really affect the schedule, so I want you all to understand that. But if all things being considered and everything kind of really falling into place, we're looking at a move-in date of about October the 1st of 2018. Now, the reason I mentioned a CM at risk, the CM at risk is a contractor that the owner selects of their choosing, and they act as a construction manager, and the at-risk portion is that they will give pricing and what we call a guaranteed maximum price before the drawings are even complete. And the reason why that's important to you as an owner, and certainly important to us as designers, is it makes sure and ensures that we're staying on the budget. When we go the old traditional route of design, bid, build, you sit there and you spend all the time designing, then you go put the project out for bid, and then you hope that when your bids come in, they come in on your budget. This process allows the construction manager to work with the design team. You have the ability to ferret out different types of systems as you're designing to try to achieve the efficiencies and cost, so that you know as you're developing the project what your cost of construction is. And that's very, very critical. It makes a project move much faster, and it's a system that would allow us to get into construction, much quicker. And you ask, well, why is that so important? That's important because the cost of construction is going up, we believe, and from all the historical facts, somewhere around 6.5% per year. So if you apply that to the cost of this building, you're talking about a $9 million increase on a yearly basis every year that we delay construction of this project. And so when we developed this plan, as we said, how can we mitigate that escalation in costs for the county and the city in this case, and then how can we also try to make sure that we ensure that the county stays on budget? Because the worst thing to do is to design a building, you go bid it out, and then you have these bids that come in that are way over budget, and then we have to do what you call value engineering or value management. A lot of that can be mitigated and pretty much done away with if we're working with that construction manager at risk while we're actually designing. It's for those of y'all here in Edinburg, it's the system that the City of Edinburg used. They used it very, very successfully. Mr. Torres is here as a council member, and I'm sure he could talk to you all about the benefits of a CM at risk. I know that that process for them in their last bond issue saved them enough money that they could afford to do a new performing arts center at Robert Vela High School that was not part of the bond issue. So there's some really real benefits to that, and I think it would behoove the county to look into that as a viable option for the selection for the delivery of construction.
South Texas College
Yeah, also South Texas College, thank you, Brian. South Texas College is using that same construction manager at risk. And now, for the most part, pretty much everything that we're doing now is really going to a CM at risk. And it's done so that we're not ending up, after bidding, after design, having to deal with issues of how construction has risen from the time that we started design to the time that we're bidding it. So, recommendation to you all as your design professional, I would really look into that. We believe it's a very viable option and really serves the county well to look at doing a CM at risk.
Thank you for your recommendation. I know that there's about 4 or 5 different methods of constructing a facility as large and as expensive as this one is going to be. And we certainly will consider the construction manager at risk, but our intention, at least we feel that right now, our intention is to hire an attorney that'll come in and explain all of the different pros
Nuances.
and cons of each one of these different construction methods, and then at that time we'll seek the one that's best for us. No way?
Thank you all.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, Judge, Mayor, members of the council, members of the Commissioners Court. My name is Noé Hinojosa with Estrada Hinojosa and Company. My partner Jorge Garza is with me too, and we sort of giving you a little spreadsheet here as to what we believe could be an approach to funding the project. As you both entities know, we have the privilege of working for the both of you. I think we came on board with the City Council a little bit over a year ago, and we've been now with the court about 2+ years. But not a stranger to the community. We feel that this project is one that can really change what this City of Edinburg really looks like. And at the end of the day, what we try to do here is present to you a plan that is somewhat affordable, but that's more of a policy issue. I know that when I came on board with the county, both County Judge Garcia and Mayor Garcia shared with me that they had an agreement between the city not wanting to put more than $30 million into the project, and the county wanted to make sure that a project was could be achieved without a tax rate increase. And we think that when we're done with this presentation, we think we can achieve both. The county will be more challenged, but we'll get through that issue in a minute. What you have in front of you is a spreadsheet that pretty much provides you all with a perspective of how it is that the county today finances its debt. Counties by statute do 3 things. They build roads, they build courthouses, and they build jails. And today, the county of Hidalgo has annual payments on his debt of about $20 million. That drop about $1 million between now and the year 2021. Then in 2022, it drops a little slighter to about $18.5 million. And then by the year 2027, the payments of the county are about $8.5 million. And I'm reading from the fourth column from left to right. In 2029, literally 13, 14 years from now, the payments at the county are about $5 million and change. And literally, when we get to 2030, 2031, the payments are about $2 million and change. So I only mention that to give you a perspective as a policymaker and those of you who are listening, that the current debt structure of the county is a pretty aggressive one in terms of paying off his debt rapidly. At the end of the day, though, I know that some of the members of the court have expressed a concern not only about the courthouse, but other projects that they have to be challenged with. And in the end, what we're solving here today is for how to fund this courthouse project. The mayor, on behalf of his peers on the council, shared with me, hey, how can we get this done with $30 million, basically? When you go to the eighth column from left to right, you'll see a column titled Contribution from the City of Edinburg, capped at $1.5 million. It will start on or about 2018, that contribution, and will end on 2047. Today, if the city were to go out and finance $30 million, it probably cost over the same term, over 30 years, at a rate of 465, like we're using here for preliminary purposes, it'll cost the city about $1.8 million to $1.775 million. So, in working very closely with the judge, with court, with staff, we felt that $1.5 million is a good starting point, a good number to play with, and certainly something that we believe, as the advisor to the city and advisor to the EEDC, that it will be an amount that both, between the both, could afford to contribute to the county on an appropriation basis. I've heard from some staff at the county that are concerned that the city cannot be held accountable for the payment of the county, for the payment of his share of the $1.5 million. And all I can tell you, the county, is that whenever you have interlocal agreements between two entities like the city and the county, keep in mind that, like you and I as individuals, city governments too have a credit quality rating. The city's of Edinburg credit quality rating is a AA- by both Standard & Poor's and Fitch. The credit of the county is AA2 by Moody's and AA- by Standard & Poor's. So literally the county is a notch higher than the city. If the city, future city councils, were to opt to not make that payment, the standards of credit today are so stringent that if that were to be the case, the city of Edinburg literally will be downgraded to below investment grade for failure to make that appropriation. So even though the appropriation payment is not a legal enforceable payment, from a credit perspective, the doors to the city will be shut in terms of its ability to borrow money for other projects. In fact, the rating agencies will take into account that you, the city, will make it this $1.5 million for 30 years, whether it's coming from the EDC, from City General Fund, or whatever funds. So the county needs to be at peace that the city will stand behind its pledge, behind its commitment. So
Again, can you explain what the consequences would be
yes, for the city?
for the city? Yes.
Yeah, if the city were to not make the payment, future councils, it will be an automatic downgrade in today's credit standards. I suspect that the credit standards are not going to get more liberal. They're only going to get more stringent. So if the city were to say today, we'll pay the $1.5 million, and on year 14, somebody says, we don't want to make that payment, then the city very likely will have to disclose that that payment was then made, and it will be automatically downgraded. And conceivably, we're certain it will be below investment grade.
And I realize you're not a lawyer,
Yes, sir.
but in this particular case, I know that we're going to have the involvement not just of the city, but also of the EDC, is the way I've been understanding it. How do we have that, the EDC and the city's involvement, how do they interplay?
Yes, Judge, a good question. And I'm not a lawyer, not pretend to be one, but you're two formidable lawyers, both the judge and the mayor. I'll say this, that today, if you so choose to proceed with the memorandum of understanding, I suspect that we will bring, our lawyers will bring to you documents that will be, that will address those concerns of yours. I can say that from a financial standpoint, I try to keep things simple. Both the City Council and the Commissioners Court, as far as I'm concerned, are the two parties that need to be obligated to each other. The county to deliver a product, an asset in the courthouse, and the city to fulfill its obligation of this $1.5 million for 30 years. If the EDC, for other particular requirements that they may have, there are statutes in the state constitution that sometimes force development corporations to have direct agreements with a county or another political subdivision. We'll explore those. But my intent is to have only one party next to the County Commissioners Court, and that is the City of Edinburg. And where the City of Edinburg collects from is EDC, is water and sewer, is parking fees. Don't worry about that. You're going to have, in our opinion, the City of Edinburg as a parent company of that entity, your partner. That's what I like to achieve. Whether I can do it is yet to be determined. I hope that solves, or that hopefully that answers your question, Judge. Mayor?
Another comment and observation for the public.
Yeah.
The City of Edinburg, I just heard this from someone yesterday, Cameron County, Brownsville, the county, and several places around. The City of Edinburg's on fire. That's what they're saying everywhere.
It is.
We've got some major, big projects going on. We are booming, no question. Whatever the reasons may be. Sometimes I say I'd rather be lucky than good, but sometimes we make our own luck, so we pat ourselves on the back a little bit sometimes. But to go back to...
I'll do it for you, Mayor.
All right, there you go. But to go back to your comment about the $30 million, so the public knows we didn't just pick this figure from out of the air on participation. Just to clarify, I guess my question to you was, knowing all these projects that the city is participating with, tell us as a financial advisor what we can afford without increasing our tax rate in any way, affecting our general fund. And the $30 million is what was affordable to the City of Edinburgh.
Mm-hmm. That's a very good question, Mayor. I think
that's the way it was.
yes.
Yeah.
Unlike the court, unlike the Commissioners Court, the City Council, I guess, enjoys of a very good fund in the EDC, and they're just, I know Mr. Garcia's here. He's going like gangbusters out there today. Of course, you will know that sales tax tends to be a more cyclical revenue than property taxes are. But today, the EDC alone can support the $1.5 million payment. Of course, he gives me the bad look every time I mention that, but we're among friends, and I tell you that today the city has the means to make that payment without too big of a concern.
And by the same token, on behalf of the county, we find ourselves at this stage in our county's history that by restructuring our debt service and taking into consideration some factors that are coming up in our future, very immediate future, that we too also can tell the public and advise the public that the dollars that we're talking about are well within our budget, that we will not be needing to increase our tax rate, our county's tax rate, in order to meet the debt service on the new courthouse. Am I correct?
I think, as you well know, Judge, in fact, if you look at the spreadsheet, the second column from right to left, on the very first row, the interest and sinking fund tax rate will have to be adjusted by 1 cent. After that, it needs no more further adjustments. The total tax rate, though, doesn't have to be impacted. So, in fact, one of the things that we're doing as staff and as a consultant to you is find the efficiencies of economies of scale, of the costs associated with what you currently pay for the current operations of the courthouse, and what will those costs be once the new courthouse come in play. So we're hopeful that there'll be some economies of scale, but we won't know that until about April or May. But for now, 1 cent is what will be required from the county courthouse, for the county courthouse, from the Commissioners Court. Now, we're being very conservative. This project does not need to be funded, as you have seen, and as you can see up there on this construction timeline, until about January of next year. We are contemplating funding the project on or about September 28th of 16. Any delays on the project will only come to the benefit of the county as it pertains to making its first payment. So very likely, just today, interest rates continue to stay pretty flat, and they're pretty low. Today, a financing for the county will be at about 365, maybe less. We're looking at numbers at a 465. So going back to your question, Judge, if there's something that needs to be adjusted, we believe that you have enough means within your total tax rate to allocate this increase of a penny. At the end of the day, we're also being very conservative on the cost of the loan.
And then your comment about Gus Garcia, I was watching his face when you said the EDC could afford it by itself.
Yes?
And what I read in his face was, ya no me ayudes, por favor.
No, you notice he went like this.
Mr. Guerra, I'm going to let Mr. Guerra explain the financing aspect of this.
Actually, I was just making a comment. I was asking Sergio, and Mr. Hinojosa was commenting on the county's portion with respect to our total tax rate and what the additional 1 cent to the INS. And so just some quick math, we believe that internally, from maintenance and operation on the county side into the INS is somewhere around $3 million. And so Mr. Hinojosa talked about finding those efficiencies from within, economies of scale. And so that's a task for us at the office.
All right.
So today, I
In the
think
end, for the benefit of the public, there will be no taxing rate increase.
that's always been your pleasure. Yeah.
Correct.
So,
Thank you, Bob.
yes, sir.
So in regards to this project, there's a column B as in boy. It's like the 9th column from left to right. Those are the net total costs or the net total debt payments to the Commissioners Court, to the county court. There's a court filing fee of $1.8 million, and for that we can't thank enough our state leaders that helped us in Austin to incorporate some new increase of rates for court filing fees. We believe that revenue could be as much as $2 million. This is the first year. We just started January 1st of 16. We are using only $1.8 million. If the numbers are higher than that, than $1.8 million, let's say it's $2 million or $2.5 million or $3 million, those revenues are going to be exclusively dedicated for the repayment of the courthouse debt. Therefore, if the numbers are larger than we anticipate, the impact on the tax rate for the county is going to be less than anticipated. So with that, I'll conclude, and questions you may have.
Commissioners, are there any questions?
Gentlemen. Okay, thank you, Noe.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Judge.
Do we need action? Do we need a motion or?
I believe we should take action in the form of a motion that will then will require us to prepare a document that we can later formalize that will lay out the specific terms of the memorandum of understanding. But generally, I guess it's within the spirit of our intent that we're going to be working together to construct this new facility for the benefit of the county of Hidalgo and the city of Edinburg, where we have our agreement and understanding that the city will help in the construction funding up to a maximum of $30 million.
$30 sounds great.
$30 million to be paid either at the outset or in monthly or annual payments, depending on the circumstances of the city. And we can reduce that to writing along with the various terms that we can all agree on, our lawyers can agree on, need to be included in that document.
Judge, if I may, there was a memorandum of understanding, a draft that was circulated. Richard from the city, our city manager of Edinburg has it, and it delineates some of what you're talking about here about the 30 million and the principal and interest, and then things happen quicker. And if the total project actually was lowered, the 20% accordingly would lower as well, the total amount. So I think Richard hasn't had a lot of time to look at it yet, but I think their legal can probably look at it.
We need a clause. I read it, I just saw it and I read it. I do think we need a clause that will allow us an opportunity to have our lawyers, our respective lawyers, review it and either add or delete whatever it is that we at some point in time may or may not agree upon.
Well, the other thing too, judges, is that it was drafted so that it's acknowledged that additional terms need to be determined, and we're going to need another agreement. This isn't going to be the final agreement. Like Mr. Hinojosa said, we're going to probably come back with an interlocal or a Chapter 380 agreement, and that one will really specify the terms. But even for the purposes of the MOU, we were going to recommend that it be subject to final legal review, and maybe on both sides, with the understanding.
Where's the language that talks about that?
5, future development and actions. And just for the city's perspective on the commitment from the city, that was taken from the interlocal that was provided to the county from the city, from the law office of Ricardo Palacios. So again, it talks about the cap, and it talks about if it comes in less, and if it is financed. And it also says that the city will continue to be a part of the process moving forward.
And I would suggest also that our motion, I guess, direct our attorneys to move forward with a memorandum of understanding to be had complete and have a signing ceremony on or about a date certain. And I don't know how much time we'll just go ahead and make that part of the motion to put a little pressure on our lawyers to have it ready, but sooner than later. I know our lawyers can have it by tomorrow.
No comment.
Any ideas on a timeline for maybe a signing
2 to 4
ceremony?
weeks, which is
The judge, in all honesty, the quicker, the better. In the spirit of, I believe that 2 weeks is sufficient time for legal counsel on both sides to get together. Again, the agenda item that we have in working with the city is open-ended in the sense that it's the spirit of the collaboration between the two entities, and it talks about the city's participation with respect to the financial contribution. And so, as Bobby said, that the motion in and of itself could include the language that say, subject to the terms, conditions that legal counsel between both parties, because we would have to come back and take a final action with respect to what the agreement states for both sides. So unless I'm, and I'll defer to legal counsel because I know that we can get bogged down in the detail, but I believe 2 weeks, 15 days is sufficient time.
All right, well, 15 days, Judge.
Well, in order, I would suggest Tuesday, the 1st, March the 1st is, give us a little bit more than 2 weeks.
Okay.
And that might be a good date to shoot for
A joint meeting.
joint meeting or signing ceremony.
Okay. March 1st?
If that,
That's
if
not
that
election
works.
day,
I'm
is
just
it?
looking on my calendar.
That is election
That
day.
is election day.
Oh,
March
that's-
1st is election
Then
day.
that doesn't work.
Well, how about then, Mayor, how about
The after
just
party.
1 week down the road? How about March 8th?
There you go.
Just 1 week after election?
That sounds good.
March 8th, that'll give us a little more window.
Yeah,
Okay.
all right.
Or the day after the election, either way.
I think March 8th would work, and again, it would be a joint meeting, and then we could, again, work out the details with respect to the ceremony.
So how did was the motion?
So I think just the motion in itself, again, would be the action on the memorandum of understanding between the County of Hidalgo and the City of Edinburg regarding financial contribution for the courthouse project, subject to legal review and final consensus amongst both parties, the County of Hidalgo and the City of Edinburg, for the March 8th meeting.
That'll be my motion right there.
I'll second that.
All right, those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries in the county commissioners' part.
Do I hear a motion for, a similar motion from the city?
So moved.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. I guess those are the only matters.
Those matters, and then, Judge, on our end, all we have left is our adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen. And we want to sincerely thank our counterparts in the City of Edinburg for their foresight and what I believe is their wisdom in helping us build this new facility for the City of Edinburg.
I'm excited. Let's do it. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
All in favor signify by saying aye. We're adjourned.